Hello, everyone. Today, I will continue to tell you a Vietnamese fairy tale called Thach Sanh. This story teaches us that when we live virtuously, we will encounter good fortune, and when we live wickedly, we will meet with misfortune. Let's start listening. Once upon a time, there was an elderly couple who were poor and made their living by chopping wood. Despite being 60 years old, they still had no children. Although they were poor, the couple always helped others tirelessly and were praised by people far and wide. Moved by the couple's kindness, the Jade Emperor sent his prince to be reborn as their child. After 3 years and 9 months, the wife gave birth to a baby boy, but the husband had already passed away. The baby was handsome and sturdy, able to sit and stand immediately after birth. The mother named him Thach Sanh and struggled to raise him on her own. When Thach Sanh was 7 years old, his mother also passed away, leaving him to live alone under a banyan tree with nothing but a small axe. He continued his parents' work of chopping wood to sustain himself. At the age of 13, the Jade Emperor sent a talented celestial being to teach Thach Sanh martial arts and various magical powers. One day, a wine merchant named Li Thong happened to pass by and rest under the banyan tree. He saw Thach Sanh returning from the forest carrying a large load of wood and thought to himself, "This man is as strong as an ox. If I bring him to live with me, I would gain many benefits." Thinking this, Li Thong approached and befriended Thach Sanh, eventually persuading him to become his sworn brother. Thach Sanh, touched by the stranger's kindness, gladly agreed. He then left his dilapidated hut under the banyan tree and moved in with Li Thong's family, who specialized in making wine. With Thach Sanh's help, their workload was greatly eased. At that time, the area was terrorized by a monstrous ogre that possessed many strange transformative powers and habitually captured people to eat. Despite several attempts by the royal army to eliminate it, they always failed. In the end, they had no choice but to negotiate, building a temple for it, and annually offering a person as a sacrifice to keep it from wreaking havoc. Unfortunately, it was Li Thong's turn to be the sacrifice that year. Upon hearing this news, Li Thong was terrified. However, he and his mother quickly devised a cunning plan to trick Thach Sanh into taking his place. They thought, "He has no parents, has just arrived here, and doesn't know the area well. This plan should work smoothly." That very afternoon, Li Thong was waiting and ready. When Thach Sanh returned from gathering wood, Li Thong presented a tray full of wine and meat, inviting him to eat, and then said, "Tonight is my turn to guard the temple, but there is a batch of wine at home that needs to be finished. Please take my place at the temple for one night and return at dawn." Of course, Thach Sanh didn't suspect a thing about Li Thong's request, so he agreed to go immediately. At midnight, just as Thach Sanh was dozing off, the ogre suddenly appeared from behind the temple. It bared its claws and fangs, intending to devour him alive. But Thach Sanh quickly evaded and grabbed his axe to fight back. The ogre used all kinds of magic, constantly appearing and disappearing. However, Thach Sanh remained undaunted, calmly using his own magical skills to attack the ogre. It didn't take long before Thach Sanh's axe cleaved the ogre into two halves. It revealed its true form as a giant python. Thach Sanh swiftly chopped off its head, collected its golden bow and arrow, and carried them back home. Around the third watch of the night, while Li Thong and his mother were still asleep, they suddenly heard Thach Sanh knocking at the door. Thinking it was his ghost, they were terrified and prostrated themselves in fear. But when Thach Sanh came inside and recounted the story of how he killed the ogre, they were finally relieved. However, Li Thong quickly devised another scheme to deceive him. He said to Thach Sanh, "Oh no, that python was the king's pet for a long time. Now you've killed it. If the king finds out, you'll be executed. Hurry, while it's still dark, run away immediately. Leave everything here to me, I'll handle it." Hearing this, Thach Sanh was deeply alarmed. He hastily bid farewell to Li Thong and his mother and left. Having nowhere else to go, he returned to his old, tattered hut under the banyan tree and resumed chopping wood daily to sustain himself. As for Li Thong, after Thach Sanh had left, he took the ogre's head to the capital and told the king that he had slain the monster and saved the people. The king praised him highly and bestowed upon him the title of commander, granting him wealth and honor. Around the same time, the king's daughter had reached the age of marriage. However, she had not found anyone worthy of her. Princes from neighboring countries had sent envoys with gifts to ask for her hand in marriage, but none had caught her eye. Finally, the king decided to hold a grand festival, inviting all the princes from nearby lands as well as young men from across the kingdom. During this festival, the princess would throw a ball from a high tower, and whoever caught it would be allowed to marry her. However, on the day of the festival, just as the princess was about to throw the ball, a giant eagle suddenly appeared, flying across the sky. This eagle was actually a demon with various magical powers. When it saw the beautiful princess on the high tower, it immediately swooped down and snatched her away. At that time, Thach Sanh was sitting under the banyan tree. By chance, he saw the giant eagle flying by with a person in its claws. He quickly picked up his bow and shot an arrow at it. The eagle was hit in the wing and, in pain, had to land to remove the arrow. Despite the severe pain, it gritted its teeth and carried the princess back to its cave. Thach Sanh followed the trail of blood left by the eagle to find its lair. When the king saw that his daughter had been taken by a demon, he was devastated and immediately ordered the newly appointed commander, Thong, to find the princess at all costs. He promised that if Thong succeeded, he would marry the princess to him and later pass the throne to him. Thong accepted the order with a mixture of joy and anxiety, unsure of how to handle the situation. Eventually, he thought of Thach Sanh, his sworn brother, believing that only Thach Sanh could solve his current dilemma. Therefore, he ordered soldiers to search for Thach Sanh everywhere. Not only that, he also had the people hold a 10-day festival to gather information about Thach Sanh. However, 8 or 9 days passed without any news. It wasn't until the 10th day that they found Thach Sanh among the festival crowd. When Thong mentioned the need to find the princess, Thach Sanh honestly recounted the whole story of shooting the eagle. Hearing this, Thong was overjoyed and immediately asked Thach Sanh to lead him and the soldiers to the cave to rescue the princess and earn the king's favor. When they reached the cave, they saw that its entrance led deep underground and no one dared to descend. Thus, Thach Sanh volunteered to explore the cave. He tied a rope around his waist, and the people above slowly lowered him into the cave. That day, the eagle was seriously wounded and lying in one place, forcing the beautiful princess to serve it in every way. When Thach Sanh reached the bottom of the cave, he hid in a corner, waiting for the princess to pass by, then signaled for her to come over. The princess was astonished and deeply moved to see a stranger risking his life to rescue her. Thach Sanh gave the princess a packet of sleeping powder, instructing her to mix it into the eagle's water. Once the eagle was asleep, Thach Sanh tied the rope around the princess and signaled for the people above to pull her up. When it was his turn, however, the ungrateful Thong ordered his men to seal the cave entrance with a large stone, abandoning Thach Sanh and leaving. Seeing the cave entrance blocked by Thong and his men and with no way to climb out, Thach Sanh was furious. He began to smash and break everything in the cave in hopes of finding an exit. At that moment, the eagle woke up. Seeing a stranger in its lair and not seeing the princess, it became enraged and charged at Thach Sanh, intent on killing him. Of course, Thach Sanh couldn't let it have its way. He used his magical powers to fight back, and a fierce battle ensued. However, the eagle was still severely wounded, so it wasn't long before it was defeated. After killing the demon, Thach Sanh searched everywhere in the cave for an exit. During his search, Thach Sanh saw a young man locked in an iron cage. Upon questioning, he learned that this person was the crown prince, son of the Water King. About a year ago, while the prince and his entourage were on an excursion, he was captured by the eagle and imprisoned in the cave. After understanding the situation, Thach Sanh used his golden bow to shatter the iron cage and rescued the prince. Grateful for his rescue, the prince insisted on inviting Thach Sanh to visit the underwater palace for a few days. Reunited with his son, the Water King was overjoyed and immensely grateful to Thach Sanh. He hosted Thach Sanh lavishly at the underwater palace. When Thach Sanh wished to leave, the Water King offered him many treasures, But Thach Sanh declined and only asked for a single lute. He then returned to his old, tattered hut under the banyan tree and resumed his previous life. As for the ogre and the eagle, after their deaths, their souls had no one to offer them sacrifices, so they had to wander aimlessly in search of food. One day, they happened to meet each other and shared their miserable fates. Learning that both had been killed by Thach Sanh, they plotted revenge on him out of spite. They sneaked into the king's treasury, stole some valuables, and planted them at Thach Sang's banyan tree to frame him. The palace guards followed the trail and found the stolen goods at the banyan tree, leading to Thach Sang's immediate imprisonment. As for the princess, after being brought back to the palace by Li Thong, she immediately became mute. Her once radiant face was now perpetually gloomy, and she neither spoke nor smiled. The king had no choice but to postpone her wedding. He ordered Li Thong to invite priests to set up an altar and pray for the princess's recovery. Li Thong summoned numerous skilled sorcerers to perform rituals, but none had any effect. The princess remained silent and sorrowful as before. Seeing the princess's continued silence, Li Thong became increasingly anxious. Coincidentally, Thach Sanh was captured and fell under Li Thong's jurisdiction. Li Thong, unaware that the man he had repeatedly tried to kill was still alive, thought to himself, "If he lives, he will surely take credit for my deeds and expose my wrongdoings to the king." So he decided to sentence Thach Sanh to death. While in the dark prison, Thach Sanh, in his sadness, took out the magical lute given to him by the Water King and began to play. Unbeknownst to him, the lute had magical properties, and its music resonated far and wide, expressing sorrow, resentment, and anger. The more he played, the more the lute's music revealed the neglect of the princess and the heinous crimes of Li Thong. Thach Sang's music traveled beyond the prison walls and reached the palace, where it fell upon the ears of the princess. Sitting in her high tower, she suddenly stood up and began to speak and laugh. Her first request was to see the person playing the lute. The king, bewildered by his daughter's sudden change, immediately ordered Thach Sanh to be brought to the palace. In the presence of everyone, Thach Sanh recounted his entire story, from being an orphan to becoming blood brothers with Li Thong, killing the ogre, defeating the eagle, rescuing the princess only to be trapped by his supposed brother, and finally saving the Water King's prince before being unjustly imprisoned. The king and the court officials were deeply moved and sympathetic as they listened to Thach Sang's story. The king immediately ordered the arrest of Li Thong and his mother, handing over their fate to Thach Sanh. However, Thach Sanh, being extremely compassionate, pardoned them and allowed them to return to their homeland to make an honest living. But halfway home, they were struck dead by lightning. Afterwards, the king joyfully gave his daughter's hand in marriage to the brave and kind Thach Sanh. The wedding was grand and jubilant, the most celebrated event in the capital, surpassing all previous festivities in its splendor and joy. However, the princes of neighboring countries who had been previously rejected were furious when they heard the news. They banded together, leading the armies of 18 nations to demand an explanation from the king as to why he had given his precious daughter to a pauper. When their armies surrounded the capital, they heard the enchanting music from Thach Sang's magical lute, which sapped their will to fight. In the end, the princes withdrew their forces. Thach Sanh then had food prepared for them, setting out a single small pot of rice for the vast armies of the 18 nations. The soldiers scoffed, refusing to eat, but Thach Sanh challenged them, saying that if anyone could finish the pot of rice, he would reward them generously. The soldiers, eager to prove themselves, ate with all their might, but no matter how much they consumed, the small pot of rice remained full. After everyone had eaten their fill, they bowed in gratitude to Thach Sanh and returned to their countries. Later, since the king had no heir, he passed the throne to Thach Sanh. The story ends here. How do you feel about it? Please leave your comments below the video and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to give me more motivation to share more interesting stories. And now, goodbye, and see you in the next video.